when you read these reports and you see the Asian Rafics of the world and their observations about Yorkshire and institutional racism and classism and elitism, what's your reaction to it?
Well, I don't know where it is, but I haven't played in the dressing room like that ever. What is Bazball? I don't know. It's something that someone's concocted in the media, and it's stuck. And I don't think the players enjoy it very much.
Talk about hating Aussies. There's one you do hate, right?
There's only one.
Yeah, Chappell, right?
Ian Chappell.
Yeah. This is Upfront with me, Simon Jordan. I believe there are a lot of vacuous, uninformed, unchallenged opinions out there. I want to get to the bottom line and cut through the nonsense. So with this podcast with William Hill, I'm going to get people with strong views who think they can stand them up to proper scrutiny. There's a good chance I might learn something along the way, and more importantly, so might you. Joining me in today's episode, a man considered by many as one of England's greatest all-rounders. Headlines on and off the pitch, amassing 5,200 test runs and taking 383 test wickets along the way. He's raised millions for charity and even takes a seat in the House of Lords. Ian Botham, welcome to Upfront.
Thank you, Simon.
Nice to see you. When I have this image in my mind, and I'll take you to a space in my life. When I'm 13 years of age, I'm playing in the Colts, and I've got a little bit of batting practice being given to me by Mark Butcher's dad, Alan Butcher. And I come home from school and I say to my father, I want a Duncan Fernley bat. And he says, why do you want that? I said, because Botham's got one. That's the kind of space and place I think that someone like you has sort of carved out for himself in the sport in terms of transcending sport. But one of the first questions I always ask you guys that have operated at the highest level is, what was it that made you? What was it that created? What were the driving forces that put you in play to be what you became?
Well, I suppose I learned very quickly at school that playing sport for a living is a lot better than working. So I stuck to that throughout. But no, I think the thing was, I knew I had a talent, and see so many times you see kids with talent, but they just drift away. I was quite determined. I was registered with Somerset at the age of 14, and then I had to make a choice between football and cricket, and Bird, the then manager.
I was going to say to you, is that right?
Yeah,
that there was an interest for you at Palace.
He came down to see my parents.
Did he?
Yeah, to see if they would approve of him signing apprenticeship or whatever it was in those days. And I sat down with Father Les afterwards, and after he had departed, and I just said to my dad, "What do you reckon?" He says, "Yeah, it's very good." He says, "But you're a much better cricketer."
Right.
And then a footballer. And he played a high level of football.
What were you, centre forward?
Centre half.
Centre half?
Yeah.
Right. One of the two.
Yeah, they really matter. Sometimes just still centre forward was meant to be centre half.
Yeah.
It took me that long to get back.
Right. So cricket was the calling. But my point was more about, there are levels. There are guys that go into professional sport and have a very good living at it and do very well at it and have a reasonably long career or moderately short one, depends if they're injured. And then there's guys like you. What made you become so irrepressible, so good at what you did, that you commanded and demanded? Dennis Compton didn't write the most complimentary things about you, I think, back in the mid-70s. But Dennis, okay, I'll leave that one alone. I'll ask his son. But what was it that turned you into this irrepressible force? That's just not just because there's lots of talent out there, isn't there? Lots of people have got talent, but it's about then translating that talent into outcomes where you're the best in your field.
Well, I just had confidence, lots of confidence, which I think is important. Bordering at times when I was younger, maybe with arrogance. But that's not a bad thing, I don't think. If you want to be, at the end of the day, if you're determined and you want to go to the top in your sport, you have to make a lot of sacrifices on the way, and you have to have tunnel vision. And I had tunnel vision. I didn't want to, I brushed everything aside. I wanted to play cricket. Once I signed on, then that was it.
I've always had this sort of thing about confidence and arrogance. You see, I don't like the word arrogant.
No.
I don't like the word aggressive. What we do in this country, I don't know if you feel the same way, is when someone's assertive, right, and know what they want, people say he's an aggressive bastard because it's a way of diminishing you. And when someone's got real confidence and belief in themselves, they then switch it into arrogance because it's a word that takes people into a space where they can demean you. Do you think that you were arrogant because you described it yourself? I'm not suggesting that it's the right description of yourself, but Was that because I think people who are arrogant lack substance? You don't lack substance, right? So confidence or arrogance?
Well, it's confidence,
Yeah.
but sometimes you have to compare that with arrogance to get the message through.
Yeah.
So it's if you drive through the middle of those two. But no, without that, you won't achieve anything in sport. You've got to have that tunnel vision.
Single-minded belief.
Absolutely, totally.
This inherent self-belief that I think you've exuded all your life, by the sounds of it, where did it come from? Was it installed in you by parental influence? Is it just part of what made you you?
Do you know, a lot of people ask me that question, even people I was playing with when in my 20s and my 30s. And to be honest with you, I have no idea. To me, it just, I want to be competitive.
Yeah.
And you've got to be in the kitchen to be at the top. Yeah, of course. And and the other thing that helped as well is that Viv Richards and I grew up together.
Mm.
So Viv joined Somerset, and we made our first class debuts together in '74 against Lancashire, and we shared a house for 10 years. Well, I shared his house for 10 years, and because my family were always based up in the north, there was competition between us, but he's godfather to my son Liam, and we still now to this day. I was over for his 70th birthday last year, or a year and a half ago, in the Caribbean, and he hasn't changed, and the relationship hasn't changed, and those are special relationships.
Yeah, he was some player, wasn't
he? Yeah, he's a great player, but he's a great human being as well, and you don't really see that side of him when he's out there playing, but when he walked out there was a presence.
Yeah, I remember watching him.
And he'd give that little swagger out and chewing the gum and ready to go. And I just think I loved that. And I thought I hope these young players are watching and seeing if you're good enough and strong enough and mentally and physically, that is, then you can go out there and do what Viv does. And I think I learnt a lot from that.
Are you easily influenced?
No.
No? Just by the right people.
Yeah,
in an ideal world.
You sort of filter a lot of it out.
Yeah.
But no, I had a very strong leader as a captain, which helped Viv and I. If he was sat here now, he would say exactly what I'm going to say now, and that's without Brian Close,
right?
Who was the toughest character I've ever known in the world of sport. I remember we were in a restaurant when the Fraser Ali fight came up. And he just stood up and crowded restaurant said, "Well, you tell me which one of those is going to knock me down, lad." And I just thought, okay, skip, yeah.
Well, what did tough look like to you? I mean, that's an expression of an observation. But I mean, I've read things on Brian Close, and that's the thing that comes out all the time, that he was very stoic and also very, very strong, and you knew where you stood with him.
And he was fair.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you learnt all sorts from him. He was fearless. As you remember, he was brought back when he was in his 40s to play against the West Indies. The might of the West Indies, that was the start of their reign of almost terror to a lot of batsmen. And they conquered the world for, the next 20 years?
Yeah.
And they were the most formidable side that I think has ever played Test cricket.
Right. When you were playing cricket, I mean, I spoke to Matt Letizia about football and trying to understand his motivations of always staying at Southampton. And his big thing was to go on the pitch, and his main motivation was to entertain.
Yeah.
What was the most important thing for you? I think I know the answer, but
well, we are entertainers. That's what we do. It's no different really than an actor walking onto the stage. We're there, and we're there to captivate the audience. And to captivate the audience, you've got to be pretty exciting. You've got to be doing it well. I loved it. I walked out there as soon as I stepped out into that field and walked out to the crease, and the crowd, waiting to see you. And no, it's just a great feeling. And
I thought you'd have said winning.
Well, winning
straight out the gate.
Well,
I thought that would have been the default setting.
I don't think I ever have to say that because I didn't play anything to lose.
Yeah.
So if you're a pro and you want it enough, which I have done all my career, then the one thing that it's all about is tunneling everything to victory. When I say I wanted to entertain, I played with someone like Geoffrey Boycott, and Geoffrey played his way, which took a lot of concentration to be out there that length of time. I was, say, a little bit more flamboyant. I wanted to go out, and if it was there to hit, I would go at it. And sometimes it cost me my wicket, but a lot of times it won games for us. So I try to be positive, and everyone plays their own way, and there's no point in someone trying to play like Geoffrey.
Yeah.
if you haven't got that temperament and that determination. It's a different kind of temperament, different kind of determination. But at the end of the day, we're all going for the same thing, and that's win.
Was it daunting for you? I mean, you made your Test debut against the Australians in '77, which is what was that, Silver Jubilee year?
Yeah, the Queen. That's right. The Queen came to Trent Bridge. Yeah.
Was that? I mean, you made such an impact. To take a FIFO in your first game is a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, especially against the old enemy.
Yeah.
But there's a number of things in that game that were quite remarkable. First and foremost, England were getting paid £200 a Test match,
right?
Not per day, for the whole game, and
overpaid them.
Yeah, overpaid vastly. Yeah, 60,000 people there, or 50,000 or 40,000 people there, and you're getting £200. But then Kerry Packer.
Of course.
So when Kerry Packer, who I think every cricketer in the world should make a statue of him and just thank you.
Because he changed the parameters.
Absolutely. And he changed the whole structure. The ECB and or MCC it was in those days, or TCB, whichever one it was, and you had the Cricket Australia. They thought we'd fight this. This is not going to happen. Well, he destroyed them in court, Packer's men. And overnight, on my debut, if I'd have started, I'd have got £200. Overnight, that changed. And this David Evans, industrial cleaning man who had made a lot of money, very nice guy, lovely guy. And he actually walked in and said, no. He said, I'm going to pay each of the England players £1,000 per Test. So that's quite an increase. And that was all down to Kerry Packer coming in. But the whole game changed then. One-day cricket, under floodlights, coloured clothing, all this came around.
He was a character, Kerry Packer, wasn't he? I knew his son Jamie quite when I was in Australia. And I used to go out when I was buying a business in Australia, and used to walk into casinos, and everyone would give you, "You're with Mr. Packer. Here's $10,000 line of credit." I'm like, why would I be given? Oh, because you're with Kerry Packer. Everyone gets a line of credit to go into casinos. He was a character, wasn't he?
Well, we were playing in Brisbane, and he opened a casino down the Gold Coast, and he took us. Had these limos turned up, and the team. I hasten to add, it was not during the middle of a game, but the team were all taken
too busy smoking marijuana during that.
No, we went straight away down to the coast, had our wives, and he gave all the wives, I think it was $1,000 chip.
Yeah.
And he said to the girls, just go and cash it. Don't waste it.
Is he the one? I think he is. There was a story going around about Kerry Packer, and I'm going off piece there, but that he was at a table in, I think it was in Vegas. And there was a Texan there making a big noise about how much money he made. I've made 50 million. I've made 50 million. 80 million.
Tell you the numbers.
And Kerry Packer said, "I'll flip you for it." Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And he broke many a casino. He would only play the table himself. He'd have the whole blackjack table.
Yeah.
He'd cover every box.
Yeah.
And he didn't bet in fivers.
Going back to you specifically as a cricketer, did you always know that you were going to be an all-rounder?
I don't think you think that way at the age. When I was sort of 7, 8, 9, which is when I started to realise I could play the game.
Yeah.
You didn't really think of it as an all-rounder. I just thought, well, I'll bowl my couple of overs, and then he'll bowl his couple of overs, and I'll bat whatever. Yeah. And that's how it was. And then you develop, and then you suddenly realise, or your senior players realise, hang on, you should do both here. Come on, let's get on with it. And the batting just was much more natural to me.
Was it?
And the bowling got stronger and stronger.
Right. What did you enjoy more?
I enjoyed every aspect, to be honest. I have a very, very low threshold when it comes to concentration, and some of the guys would sit there and be quiet. I'd start cutting socks in half and things like that, just to, they pull the socks on. Oh, no, he's at it again.
To amuse yourself and others around you.
Yeah, but I love being involved. I filled at slip most of my career, bowled, batted, and try to keep myself in the game as much as possible. And I wanted to be there, and it goes back to that we said earlier about you go into the kitchen, and you want to be part of it there, and it keeps you on your toes, and you can contribute whether it's bat, bowl, or catch.
Be involved in it, yeah. You get made captain in 1980, but you failed. I mean, I'm using the word failed because ultimately, I suppose that's the right word to use to win a single match leading the team. What was it that made it so difficult for you in terms of not winning a Test?
Well, first and foremost, I captained England 12 times, and 10 of them were against the West Indies,
right,
home and away, and we lost 1-0 and 2-0.
Right.
not 5-0, 5-0, 5-0.
No, fair enough. Yeah.
So I thought we did well. We had our chances in the very first test to beat them, but a couple of drop catches at vital moments.
Did you want to change anything? What you're saying basically is sod the statistics, right? The fact of the matter is we played the best team in the world over 10 of those games, and really and truly we didn't do that badly.
Well, and also you've got to put into the equation the fact that when we got back from the West Indies, the selectors then said, "Oh, you're captain this next game
by game."
And ridiculous,
right?
Totally unsettles everybody, from the players to the families. Everybody around the game in that dressing room was confused with this.
In what way?
Well, you've got no forward planning.
Right.
I don't know what I'm going to be doing the next test.
Right.
And I did it for the first set, Trent Bridge, and then Lords, and that's when I resigned the captaincy. And Alec Bedser then went on television and said, yes, he has resigned, but I was going to sack him anyway. I mean, that's what you're dealing with.
I mean, not helpful. When you look back at it over that period of time, I mean, obviously it affected your form as well, didn't it?
Definitely.
Right. But is there anything that you look back on, because we can all do this in our lives and review things, if you had your time again in that situation, what would you have done differently?
I wouldn't have taken the captaincy at 24, not against the West Indies, but I saw that I saw that as a challenge.
Like David Moyes taken after Alex Ferguson. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, so I actually, with hindsight, and hindsight is a wonderful thing, but when I was offered it at 24, you don't say no. But with hindsight, I would have, if I'd have sat down and just reined it in for another year and a half, then we were the Australians and India and et cetera, that would have been the time to develop that skill.
Right.
But when you're up against the best side that arguably ever lived, you don't have that time to fine tune it. They control the game. Right. And there was very little we could do. We had pockets of resistance, and we had little spells in the field where it all went well for us. But overall, it was an uphill climb and a very tough one. And you had to sit back and admire them and just think, crikey, these guys are just a different league.
But does that then translate? I mean, that doesn't translate. I mean, what you're saying, I suppose, is after the West Indies series, I've got the Australians we were a match for at that time, weren't we? Mm. And the fact that you've only been given the gig on a test-by-test basis is compounding the problem of the fact you've been beaten by the West Indies. The media are on it and at it with you about the fact you ain't winning anything. Mm. And then you've got the Aussies coming here and you haven't won in the first two tests and your form's gone to shit.
There's a thing called continuity.
Right.
And that's what was lacking from my point of view.
But continuity is only a good thing, mate, if it's going the right direction, though, isn't it?
Well, that's the point. We very hard to get it going in the right direction under those circumstances. It was almost a case of we went to the Caribbean and we knew we were going to get bombarded. But we survived that.
Right.
But we couldn't get over the edge. We just, as much as we tried and wanted to, they always counterattacked us in some way. They were simply the best.
Yeah. So do you think it's unfair then that the observation of you at that time, from the point of view of how young you were to be the England captain, but also the body of work that you had to embrace, which is the best team in the world, that ultimately you should have been either given more time, more support?
Do you know, I'd actually, if I'm 100% honest, when I actually resigned, I felt a different man.
Right. In what way?
I had weight gone off my shoulders. I can now clear the head.
Right.
And because when you're a captain, and this is probably where I was not at my best, is that you have to think about everybody else.
Everybody else, yeah.
And not so much, if you're playing football, the game runs itself. The players run themselves. Captains really don't. It's just about going tossing the coin, really. There's not a great deal to it on the field. Off the field, it's different. So it's like rugby. There's probably more motivation from a captain in a rugby field than there is.
So you must be able, or can you? Let me say, don't paraphrase your answer. I mean, you must identify or be able to relate to or understand to some extent what Joe Root said when he stepped down, because Joe Root said, "I've loved leading my country, but it's hit home how much of a toll it's taken on me and the impact it's had on me away from the game."
Yeah, it does. And when you got to the point that you had to try and keep the guys thinking they can get there, and do it. When in my heart of hearts, I'm thinking it's going to take a miracle. We're going to, something sensational has got to happen. And it didn't against the West Indies. But I still say 1-0, 2-0 was a pretty bold effort on home and away, back to back.
Given what you were playing against, were you a leader?
I don't. Do you know? I'd never been in that position since that day I resigned. I was. Mike Brearley would probably back this up. He said, and Bob Willis certainly did. You are my sergeant major. You're my man in the trenches, and that's how. And I actually, to be honest, I think that's probably where I was better. Captaincy, I think it was knocked out of me in that period,
right? And
I don't think I wasn't that bothered. I had no real interest in going back to it. So we had players, Gucci, Gower, Gatting. I'm fine. I was fine.
Is there a difference in cricketing terms between a leader and a captain? I mean, I look at Kevin Pietersen, and I think that there's certain aspects of him that makes him a leader, but not a captain, because I think he's a divisive character and all about himself. And I don't know if you agree with that.
We brought KP over virtually, our management group, and we actually managed him when he first arrived. He's not, he wasn't the easiest to handle, but at the end of the day, he was focused on being the best, and that's what he wanted to do. And his record is exemplary. What he achieved as a captain. No, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think he did captain for a couple of games or whatever in India, I think it was, and I think he was better off being KP and playing for KP, and the team would benefit.
Because there was that big thing, wasn't there? I think, was it 2014 or 13 over in Australia, where the divisions between the popularity of Kevin Pietersen and Graham Swan come to the fore. And Swanee had all the popularity, but Kevin Pietersen had some of the gravitas and cachet of being the best batsman and also the captain. And then you've got this divided dressing room as a result of it, because people like Graham and they don't necessarily warm to Kevin. If you had been playing with him and you'd been in the dressing room with him, how would you have dealt with him?
Well, if I was just one of the team, I would just quietly...
Yeah, but you're a big personality.
Yeah, but but there's a time and a place. I wouldn't do it in front of the team.
Yeah.
And if we were walking over to the nets or to whatever, or walking to the car park, then I'd have a chat. I'd just say, come on, mate, you're better than that. You can help these guys. They need your help, and they need your positivity. That's the way I'd have tackled it. I didn't play with them, so I don't know if that would have worked. But I think a few players did have words with him. But whether they were constructive or destructive, I'm not quite sure. Because
probably a bit of both, eh?
Yeah, I would think so. It's a fair chance, yeah. But no, look, KP has done extremely well for himself, and I wish him all the very best. But it's a little bit. He plays the way he commentates. It's 100% all the time. When I was taught a lesson from the late great John Arlott many years ago, when John said to me, when I just started looking at commentary and working and doing little bits here and little bits there, back in 1980, somewhere around there. And he just said to me, he said, well, you're going to end up probably in television. He said, but remember one thing. He said, remember that there's a television and there's action. Your job is not to roll over the action, but to fill in around it. Yeah. And that was a great lesson to me. And there are times you just let the game on the screen do the talking.
Do you, this change of guard in commentary, there's a lot of stuff changing in the media with people's perception of who should be in the media and who shouldn't be in it, right? And who has a right to have an opinion and who doesn't. And yourself and Gower went out of Sky at the same time?
Yeah. I already, I was just setting up the wine business, and I wanted 23 years is a long time.
Were you happy to go?
I wanted to go.
Right, okay.
I actually had lunch with Barney Francis, who was then
I know Barney.
head of the department, and I had lunch with Barney, and I said, look, before you go any further, I said, we're going to enjoy this lunch a lot more, because I don't, if you're happy with it, I'd like to not renew my contract. I've got other things to do. And I think that made it very easy for him, because I think that, you have a shelf life.
Right.
And I was quite happy to see some younger people come through. I think you'll see Stuart Broad in the commentary box. You might see Jimmy Anderson working somewhere. Maybe he might be more radio than television. But now I enjoy it. I do a lot of commentary, but I do it radio in Australia.
Right.
So I spend 4 or 5 months, 4 months certainly in Australia in the winter and a month in New Zealand. And that's because I'm down there working. Initially, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm trade envoy now to Australia. So I've enjoyed that. Yeah. And, it came at exactly the right time when I started to think, now what am I going to do?
What does that involve for you?
It means I introduce that business in England to that business there, and go along and then listen to people where they want to go, what they want to do. Can you help? Well, I've got people around me that I can direct you to that person to discuss.
You're a
things.
facilitator,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What do you make of the latest raft of commentators? People say like Nasser Hussain, because I get the impression that sometimes they're sort of preaching to the world, and I wondered what your take on it was.
Well, I think that Nasser's done extremely well. I think that series he's just done
about leadership. Yeah.
I saw a little bit of it.
It'll be interesting, won't it?
Yeah, it was, and I think it's good. And he's a bright lad, and I think he is a good commentator.
Right.
I think Mike Atherton's probably one of the finest writers.
I agree.
I think he's magnificent.
Yeah.
And Athers is a very good commentator. Yeah, look, we came up in the halcyon days when you had Bob Willis, David Lloyd, David Gower,
Bumble's great,
myself, Michael Holding, and Warney then joined
Whispering
us.
Death.
Down the line. So that was probably the peak of it, I think.
Because it was this framing of it, and I'm talking to you now, understanding that you walked away from it. I don't think David Gower was as complimentary on the way out. Yeah. And that's perhaps because his time had run its course by other people's mindset. But there's this framing, and I always liked listening to you, and I like listening to Shane Warne, God rest his soul, and I like listening to Michael Holding, and it felt like you guys were being positioned on the way out as the past. That's the past now, and we're in a new generation, and I'm not sure that's right. I think wisdom is something that is accumulated over a period of time and is never replaceable.
No, and that's, I say again, I think the time was right for me to walk. I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Sky.
Going on to the current situation with the England team, and what's going on currently with the Ashes and all that goes with that, but what do you make of Ben Stokes as an England captain?
I think he's awesome. I'm amazed. He's like a duck to water. I always, he's highly competitive. We've been the chairman of Durham. I've seen all the boys come through since 2017, and Ben was already on the radar then by that time, but he's just gone on from level to level, and he's a leader that I get the impression. A little bit like Brian Close was for us. You'd follow him. You'd follow him wherever he went. If he went through a minefield, you'd follow him, and you'd hope he would find a way. And I think he's proved that in these tests.
What's he good at?
I think he's good at most things, to be honest.
Right.
He could do with a new knee,
Okay.
but apart from that, no, he's great. His bowling is limited now,
Right.
But that's something
Because of the physicality. Yeah.
Well, I think he's going to have to get that sorted.
Right.
And he's got to pick a time when he's got the gap to do it, because the games are always concertinaed up now, so you don't get much rest time.
Why Stokes getting the best out of the team? I mean, ultimately, we'll talk about Bazball in a second, but why is he getting the best from the team, which he does seem to be getting a reaction in most instances?
Well, he's not asking anyone to do anything that he hasn't done.
Right.
And hence the point I made about Brian Close earlier on.
Yeah.
He's the guy that he puts an arm around you when he needs it. He engages you in conversation. You watch all that, and you can see it from a distance. And the players, he's quite happy for them to come up and someone has an idea, and he's learnt very quickly. And I think Brendan McCullum has been a big help to him. Right. And I think it's a totally different atmosphere. I think that's the important word, atmosphere. These guys enjoy each other's company, and they bonded. And for instance, before the last test, the guys all went off to play a bit of golf together, and they took them up to Scotland, played golf, came back, not thinking about cricket, just thinking about who's going to win the money on the golf course. Came back, and then they go into 3 days preparation or whatever they think's needed. and they're ready and fresh and happy to go. And I think that's quite important. Like, it would be unheard of in my day for the team to be taken up to Scotland to play all the courses or do anything like that. It just wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
it wouldn't have been considered. But now I think that different approach. It's a hectic world. We live constantly with iPhones pointed at you and etc. So to get the guys away and into a totally friendly environment,
relaxed frame of mind,
yeah, and then they come back with a clear mind.
You mentioned earlier on that you don't like the terminology Bazball, and I had the same conversation with Steve Harmison. He said it's bullshit. It's a construct of the media.
Yeah, of course,
which I think it is as well.
It is
just front foot cricket, isn't it? People being aggressive in what they're doing. Rather than me describe it, it's better coming from you. I mean, what is it that about Bazball, besides what I've just said, that you don't particularly like or dislike specifically?
I don't have a problem with Bazball. I have the way they play.
What is Bazball?
Exactly. That's exactly my next point. Yeah. What is Bazball? I don't know. It's something that someone's concocted in the media, and it's stuck. And I don't think the players enjoy it very much.
Why?
Because I think it's demeaning. It's what does it mean? I don't know what it means. And to me, what I see is I see a side with confidence.
Yeah.
A side that goes out there and they go out to win.
Yeah.
And I just get the atmosphere. The Bazball is nothing. Look, these guys in India, Pakistan rather, in 60 odd overs, I think it was 70 overs, scored for over 500 runs. And that's unheard of. And they've broken records. And everyone says, oh, it's too reckless. And well, they've played now, what was it? They played 12 going into this series and had won 9 or 10, whatever it was. And they've lost 2 here, but they've won now. And I have a feeling that they'll win at Manchester because...
So I bloody hope so.
Well, but I think the wheels are rolling now. And and it's confidence. And that's what Ben and Brendan do. They
instill confidence.
And also tell the guys, you are a part of this machine. And we're going to stick with you. So go out there.
Is that why they've stuck? Is that why you think they potentially stuck with Jonny Bairstow?
Yeah.
Because it isn't on form, is it?
No, but at the end of the day, people have short memories in all professional sports, you know yourself.
Yeah.
But it's only a series ago when we played Australia in the Ashes in Australia, and he went back-to-back hundreds.
Yeah.
And was a higher scorer. Then he had the unfortunate accident with his leg.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a little while.
Which is what Boycott's saying he's not fit, isn't he?
Well, I think
Boycott's saying he should be dropped.
Yeah. Well, I can understand that, and I think other people will. But my attitude is, I don't really want to change a winning team because I have a feeling that I think Jonny Bairstow will come to the front. He's that kind of guy.
But I would have thought that he would have come to the front in this test, in the test that's just gone at Headingley, because all the background noise that went on, and I'd be curious. I want to see what your take on that was, in terms of the run out and the lack of attention that he was paying, and the fact that he is dropping a lot of catches. Bairstow.
Yeah, he has dropped more than I've seen him drop collectively for a long time.
And I think that's because he's straining at the bit to try and get himself into a position where he's performing and probably overthinking it. You would know more about that than I. But I think that sometimes you have to be ruthless and you have to pick the best 11. If you've got your foot on the Australians' throat and there's one particular part of the team that isn't performing, which is the better one, Ian? Hold them in place to build a mentality in the team that has a longer term benefit, or win the next fucking game.
Well, they're going to win the next game, but they'll win it their way. And look, selection is at times very, very difficult because you have to factor so many things. Winning side is, I think, whenever you can, you always want to keep that winning side together. I think Jonny Bairstow's earned the right to play in the series because of the way he performed in Australia. And he's now, the worst game for him, the toughest game for him would have been Headingley, because everyone expects.
Yeah.
Everybody expects. Every man and his dog expected Jonny Bairstow to go out there and blaze it around and what have you.
Right.
Let's see what he does at Manchester.
If we're taking catches, this series would be almost done, wouldn't it?
Yeah. If you correlate that to the slip catches that have gone down and the keeping, you're right. If we'd have caught 70% of those, we'd probably be right up there.
We'd be almost home and host, wouldn't we?
We'll be at least 2-1 up, at least. What happened to Jonny as well in that ridiculous situation that he was put in with the run-out was stumping, technically.
Where were you on that?
I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't entertain it. Simply, the end of the over.
Yeah.
The umpire had already started walking in from square leg.
He's marked his crease.
He's gone back, tapped behind the
Yeah.
crease, and he's walked down tapping. He has no intention of trying to run. As far as he's concerned, the ball is dead.
Yeah.
And I think Australia got that wrong.
Yeah.
And I know that I was with great man Jeff Thompson. I was with him last night. And I didn't say anything. He just turned around to me and said, "Why the hell did they do that?"
Mm.
They said, "All right, if you do it, but then just turn around and say, Johnny,
Yeah,
be
absolutely.
careful,
Yeah.
carry on, and we'll move." And I thought that the statement that came out of the England camp from coach and captain was pretty spot on. And that is, I wouldn't want to win a match like
That way, yeah. But I think the problem for the captain, for Cummings, was that his popularity in his country is irrelevant to him, isn't it? His popularity in Australia. What would happen to him in Australia if he'd have gone, "No, I tell you what, I'm going to reverse that appeal. We're not interested in having that." In Australia, they'd have been going after him, wouldn't they?
No, I don't think so. I think you're getting
Because
elements.
there was a
of
lot of
course.
ridicule, wasn't there, from the Australian press about our boys crying.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you,
That's their game.
yeah, fish and chip wrappers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all.
granted,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about what the written press, because if England go on and win this game, they'll be at their own players' throats if they're not already starting to have a sniff around. So, look, all the press, the Australian press at times can be perhaps, should we say, one-eyed, but and that's been polite. But look, it's no different to what happens with our press. If they get a bee in their bonnet.
Absolutely.
And Bazball is a prime example. No one quite knows what Bazball is, but it's been made up. So good luck to them. But I think that'll die a death.
I often wonder what the media think these things are. It's like the Moneyball in football. They talk about Moneyball. I ask journalists what Moneyball means, and they haven't got a clue.
No.
It's a terminology that gets thrown around, and all of a sudden, when you actually pin them on it and go, "Well, what does Bazball mean to you then? What does Moneyball mean to you?" It means buying the right players for the right money. Oh, right, okay. Wasn't that what people are supposed to be doing forever anyway? Where's the innovation in that? Do you get exasperated when you're watching it? I know we talked about Bairstow and I watch him get out, and then I watch Moeen Ali's shot selection, and I sit there thinking, what's going through these players' minds in certain circumstances?
Well, look, I think Moeen, what he did was actually, he took one for the team, really.
Right.
As he said, okay, let's get him up. Brooks is not a number 3, as he showed out through that game, but he played a lot better, as we know.
Yeah.
He still didn't get it home, which I thought he should have done, but he played very, very well. But then Mark Wood, who's come into his own, I remember him doing the same to the Australians in Sydney, and they were scratching their heads, and he kept on hitting the captain out of the ground. So, I think what goes through their minds, I think they want to dominate. The ball wasn't doing a great deal. I think Moeen just got it wrong, but he's a good player, and he's different. He goes out there, he plays in a different way, and he could just get you into a winning position batting at 3. Probably more likely to do that than batting at 8 with the tail to come. I didn't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem if they do it again at Old Trafford. Doesn't bother me.
What have you made about Michael Vaughan and a few comments that have been made in regards to the attitude between the players? A lack of too much pally and too much friendliness going on. I think that's gone out now after the Bairstow situation. He talked about, this is what he said, England have been too friendly with Australia this series, and it's not the way to go. I don't think England are being smart. It all feels too easy and welcoming for Australia.
Well, sometimes it's best not to poke the bear. So it can work both ways. It can. I know that the Australians, certainly when AB took over and Border took over, and they were going through a real crisis cricket-wise, and he put his foot down and said, "Okay, no wives on this tour, and you don't speak to the opposition." Well, of course you are going to speak to the opposition, but the point was made. This is it, and he had a good young team, and they did as told. No wives on tour was not quite the truth, because I certainly had dinner with AB and his wife and my wife in the middle of that series. But the thing is that England now have the momentum. England are rolling and they're moving. And maybe what happened to Jonny Bairstow stirred it all up.
He's a catalyst, yeah.
And if that's the case, then go with it. And you can't go with it if he's not playing. In that sense, so he I don't know what he did do at the end of the game, but I'm sure I'll find out. But if I were Jonny Bairstow, I'd have walked into the Australian dressing room with a beer and just say, "Yeah, let's have a beer."
Yeah.
And then have his beer and go.
Mm.
There's ways to play it.
But do you think there's any validity, though? I mean, where's Michael coming from then? I know you can't speak for him, but he's obviously played in a series in 2005. Because I did some statistics without disappearing up my own arse. I wanted to ask you this. What's gone on between England and Australia that's enabled them to dominate the way that they seem to have done? And it seems to be quite a significant swing in the last 30 years.
Well, I don't think it's quite that long, because I think the real problem we have at the moment is we're playing too much one-day cricket.
Right.
And this all stems from when England went to play the 50-over World Cup in Australia and New Zealand and didn't even make it through the group. Were appalling. As bad as performance as I've seen. And then they came back from that, and they were the tail between the legs. And the board, ECB, said, right, we're now emphasising we want to get our white ball cricket sorted out. And we did get it sorted out. We won the T20 World Cup. Mm-hmm. We won the 50-over World Cup. But everything shifted. Now, what we got to do is you can't have everything one way and the other. You've got to find a middle of the road. And I just think that there's maybe one too many white ball games, competitions. To me, if you lose red ball cricket and test match cricket, we won't know the game of cricket. It'll never be the same. It's finished.
But the one game, I mean, the T20 stuff and the way that batsmen now play has changed the test outlook, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. But it's for the better. I mean, the standard of fielding. Yeah, standard of fielding has been exceptional, apart from these catches. Everyone drops a catch, but hopefully they've got that out of the system now. But look, I think the fielding is the most standout thing for me. The bowling, at the moment, we just played on 2 dead pitches, and it showed. And the first 2 pitches were appalling. That's why everything reverted to bang it in with 2 out there and what have you. So you have to make a decision. And everyone goes on about the happy hookers England. Well, I'd just like to remind everyone that you need to have a look at how many Australians got out hooking the ball.
Do you like the tribalism in cricket that seems to be there at this moment, specifically with the Aussies?
Well, that's always been there, the history of the game. Look, it's the greatest tournament you play in. And the cricketing world watches it. It's the one series that every cricketing nation will be watching with intensity, and to see what's going on and seeing the way that England are now playing and the positive way they're looking to take the game to the bowlers. You have to be maybe at times a little bit more selective, but I'm not going to knock them for that, because I think it's been great. They put bums on seats. We've had 5 full days. The ground's at capacity.
Well, I think it's great. I think that winning that game at Headingley in the manner that we did, but most importantly, winning the game, it puts cricket at the front of people's minds for the right reasons. And we'll talk about some of the other things that are going on in cricket in a second. But when you played against the Aussies, did you hate them when you played against them?
No, I actually, quite the opposite, actually. I actually
respected and admired.
Yeah. I thought these guys, when you think about it, let's put it in perspective. You've got more people inside the M25 than you have the whole of Australia.
Yeah.
And to achieve what they've done on the sports, whether it's men or women, the achievements they've had, whether it's cricket, rugby, football, you go through it. Every sport they've won World Cups.
But it's irritating, and they don't do it with any magnanimity, do they?
They enjoy it.
They make sure that everyone knows about it.
Well, what's wrong with that? I don't mind that.
To a point. I've always found with Australians that they come into this country telling us how wonderful Australia is, and I always say to them, it's so wonderful, why do you bleeding go back and live there? But talk about hating Aussies. There's one you do hate, right?
There's only one.
Yeah. Chappell, right?
Ian Chappell,
yeah. What was it the other day? I saw you two doing...
Have you seen the doco?
I've seen is the part where it didn't last long, did it?
The actual doco.
You're sat there talking to one. He's calling you a liar, and you're asking him to explain precisely what happened in a set of circumstances. This happened and that happened.
He's just so full of bullshit. It's unbelievable.
Right. Is that going to end this feud? I mean,
no.
He's an 8-year-old man, isn't he?
Well, look, I really, to be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, it's not foremost to my
Yeah.
life. I think someone wrote I saw a tweet that was sent to me, and the guy after they'd watched the full docker, and he said, "Blimey," he says, "I've been waiting all these years to find someone that holds a grudge longer than my wife." And he said, the 40-year grudge.
But it's a real thing, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's a real thing. Someone was telling me about something about Sky, and they had a camera on it was either Gow or someone, and in the car park, you're behind in the background, and they've got this shot of you getting hold of Ian Chappell, and they go, "Let's move the camera out of the way because Botham's in the background about to clump him."
Yeah, I didn't, but big Ronnie came and moved us out. Ronnie, who worked with Channel 9, and but do you know, he kept on saying, "Well, I'm not a fighter." Well, I'm not a fighter.
Yeah.
But when you continuously put your face in my face,
Yeah.
and you abuse me continuously,
There's going to be a consequence.
well, somewhere along the line, the red mist is going to come down, and people just say, even his own teammates that he played with say, "Oh, it's just a stubborn bugger," And I said, "Well, he can be a stubborn bugger, but someone one day he'll have enough of it, and he won't know what hit him, and it's not going to be me because everyone's expecting me to do it."
Obviously, over the last couple of years, Ian, there's been a lot going on in cricket and a lot of controversy around the way that cricket is held together, and the governing bodies and particular counties getting embroiled in controversy. And recently, we've seen a report by the ICEC that's written about the state of English cricket. And it's steeped in elitism, it's steeped in misogyny, and it's steeped in racism. And I wondered what you thought about when you see these things and you read these things, and it's a game you love, and it's a game that was most of the time very good to you. Is it a game that you reckon when you read this stuff? Is it a game that you recognise? You grew up in an era where you had players in the dressing room that were black players coming into this country at a different time in this country's development, with Viv Richards and Joel Garner and whoever else. And I know you made a stance that ultimately involved you leaving Somerset and going to Warwickshire because of the overseas rule and the fact that they didn't look after Viv Richards and Joel Garner. But when you read these reports and you see the Azim Rafiqs of the world and their observations about Yorkshire and institutional racism and classism and elitism, what's your reaction to it?
Well, I don't know where it is, but I haven't played in the dressing room like that ever. To generalise and paint everyone with the same brush is wrong. And I thought a lot of that it's all basically heavily loaded. I thought, and also when you read through it, everything's anonymous.
Absolutely.
Everything's anonymous. So I'm sorry, who is anonymous?
Yeah.
Introduce me to Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous.
But they always say, I mean, the observation, let's say it's racism, and I know that I'm very conscious that we're two middle-aged white men sitting in this conversation and have our views, but we're the other side of the argument. If we're part of a conversation that's saying this country is institutionally racist and cricket's institutionally racist, then there must be a view that we're able to have as well about the fact that the experiences that we have on the other side of that argument. When you look at it and you see, say, Azim Rafiq and what went on at Yorkshire, and you hear things like Monty Panesar saying the only guy that can go in and run Yorkshire County Cricket Club is an Asian chairman, and if that was said on the other side of the argument, there'd be outrage. And you see people like Martin Moxon getting thrown to the wolves on the basis of observations that are based upon anonymity, and no one ever seems to be able to name anybody. And the answer always is, well, because of my career. And because of if I start naming people, I'm not going to be able to go in that dressing room. If I start naming them, I'm going to be vilified. But I can't make head nor tail of it, Ian. I don't deny racism. You won't deny it. We live in a country that there are pockets of racism on every community, right?
Yeah.
But this observation about this report that's been written specifically that this sport is elite, it's full of elitism. Well, you didn't come from an elite background, did you?
No. Bucklesmead Secondary Modern School.
Yeah.
And I read it. I read bits of it. To be honest, I threw it down the floor in the end. To my eyes, it's a nonsense.
Right.
And a complete and utter waste of money that could have been well spent doing other things with the game.
Where's it coming from then? I mean, this idea that this brilliant game that is racked with every single ism that you can think of.
Well, it's been 2.5 years that report's
Yeah.
taken to write. At least I think 2.5 years, maybe more. Actually, it could well be more. But the point is that you are generalizing, and you cannot generalize. There will be isolated incidents, but it can go both ways. So it's not just a one-way street. So, but I am, whether I'm lucky enough or whether people know my thoughts on all racism and the stances I've made, and the time I spent with Nelson Mandela, and he tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're my hero." And I said, "Blimey, you got the right bloke." And he just said, "No." He said, "When I was incarcerated," he said, "we knew you taking the stances against South Africa and apartheid and partisan." He just said, "You're my hero." And I think I spent a lot of time with him. I shared dressing rooms with one of the great, Sunil Gavaskar, Alan Mosley, Joel Garner, Viv Richards, Richie Richardson, all these people. And I stand here now and I tell you, you find someone that says I'm a racist, because there isn't anyone out there. And I think you cannot generalize as that document does. And I think you've got to be really careful.
But to extrapolate it up, to say that something is institution, that means every aspect of it, from the dressing room to the guy at the top, everything is geared in a certain way to be elitist or to be misogynistic or to be racist. And that's not how I believe the world operates.
Well, no one's interviewed me. No one asked me my thoughts on it. And no one asked, I don't know of anyone that was asked and interviewed before this report was put together. So on what grounds is it put together? And on whose say? And that's why I go back to Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous. Anyone can write that.
It's dragging cricket's reputation through the mud, though, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think it's recoverable?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think the guys
I don't think there's that much to recover.
Me either. I think the dial will switch again.
Yeah, and it will do when people actually open their eyes and read it and look at it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players, and I just hope that some of that stuff that's gone on at Yorkshire, I just hope that we don't end up with someone with blood on their hands, because those guys, a couple of them I know, I'm not going to name them, but a couple of them I know whose lives have almost been totally destroyed.
Yeah.
And through it, and they don't know what they're meant to have done, and no one's interviewed them.
No, I've spoken to them. I also spent a lot of time speaking to Michael Vaughan about it and his views on certain things. Do you think the right guys are running the game?
I think now.
Yeah.
I think. I think. Look, where do you go with this? You can say he's got it wrong. He's got it wrong. Whoever commissioned that report, he definitely got it wrong. But I think that the guys now, we mustn't overcomplicate it. And I get a little bit fed up of hearing, we'll review this, we'll review that. Review what? Get on with it. And it's very frustrating, but I can hold my head up high, and I know that I have nothing to be ashamed of. And I don't know of anyone, as I'll say it again, I do not know of any instance, or have I witnessed it. I'm talking about players. You can't do anything about what the crowd shout and the crowd say.
I agree.
And
it's a societal issue, that one.
Yeah, so hang on. You can't blame the players for what comes off from the terraces. And so
they'll say that they've got 4,000 people that participated in this report, but I'm of the mindset, I'm not going to diminish what they've said. If you ask people to say something good, you'll get very few people to say it. If you ask people to say something shitty, you'll get lots of people prepared to say it. Go to a restaurant, you have a good meal, you tell one person. Go to a restaurant, have a bad meal, you tell 10 people, don't you? Well, I'm not trying to trivialise it.
The girls is a great example. The way they've come on, it's great. And at Durham, we've pioneering in that part of the world, because we have got a massive following now from girls from all ages coming along. We're hopefully be in a position to build a second oval at the back of the media box there. And that would be for the academy and for the girls, ladies, because it'll be a bit smaller, the boundaries, but they'll have all the facilities. It's exciting, it's good. And so how can people say,
that it's racked with misogyny? They're giving specific examples about people walking into certain environments. But look, we are with these reports, aren't we? And they keep on being commissioned, and people keep on seeming to want to be in a particular mindset about the inclusion and diversity campaign that is constantly being driven by those that have agendas.
Do you know, you cannot change history.
No.
And
you can learn from it.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So, there's players are getting challenged over something they said 10 or 15 years ago. Well, that would have meant something totally different.
Absolutely. I mean,
in a different context.
I mean, 50 years ago, whether it's right or wrong, people were watching Love Thy Bloody Neighbour on television,
Yeah.
and no one would use that language. We've all said and done. Last question for you. How would you like the legacy of Sir Ian Botham to be remembered?
I've had a saying throughout my career. I don't know where I got it from. I can't remember where I got it from. But throughout my playing time, I say to guys, listen, guys, you've got to ride the torpedo to the end of the tube. In other words, you're going that way.
Yeah.
Don't worry about what's gone that way. And you live and learn from your mistakes. And as a player, whether it's football, cricket, rugby, whatever, it doesn't matter. You learn. So don't dwell on what's not good, but embrace what is good. So ride the torpedo to the end of the tube. So I don't think you can put that on a gravestone, but
go hard or go home.
Yeah, go hard or go home.
I think it's a great saying. I think it's for people of your mindset and the achievements you've had in your life. I think that's probably pretty apt.
Well, I think just to say, I had fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And that's the way. I loved it. I played the game, and to me, it was fun.
Ian Botham, thank you very much for being so upfront with me.
Thanks, Simon.
Upfront with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. Future episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. 18+, please gamble responsibly.